Today I'm going to show you how to restring a Floyd Rose tremolo. And it doesn't matter what brand of guitar or what style of Floyd Rose tremolo you have, the procedures are pretty much the same for all of them. So let's head over to the workbench and get started. All right, here we are at the workbench, and we've got a 1989 Charvel Fusion Custom that we're going to be restringing today. Charvel's had the Schaller made Floyd Rose on it, which is very similar to the original Floyd Rose. They both function the same way, meaning that there's a long bolt that comes through the very back of the tremolo that is used to tighten or loosen the string clamp. That also functions as the pitch adjustment for the fine tuner. The Ibanez line of edge tremolos, the first variation, the edge tremolo itself, very similar to this, had a long bolt that came through the base plate here. But then the second, third, and fourth generations of Ibanez edge tremolos had a little bit different system where instead of the long bolt, they had a short little bolt at an angle directly behind each saddle that you could get it at an angle and I guess make it a little easier to tighten or loosen those bolts, and a different mechanism for the way the fine tuning system worked, but overall they all function the same exact way. Now the tools we're going to need today, going to need some wire cutters, string winder. I've been using this Tremblock by Restring, which I'll explain that in just a moment, and then an optional cleaning cloth. So let's get started. All right guys, so before we begin, we need to block the tremolo off so that when we loosen the strings, the springs in the back don't pull the tremolo back into the cavity there. So I use a little tool that I found by a company called Restring. It's called the Tremblock. Really easy, inexpensive little tool to use there. Just kind of slides underneath the back of the tremolo and prevents the tremolo from going inside the guitar there. Makes it easier to work on it. But for the longest time, I just took a cleaning cloth, folded it up, and shoved it up underneath the tremolo there. So that works just as well. So whatever you've got, just something to keep the tremolo from going inside the cavity of the guitar. Now we're going to remove the 3 locking clamps that are on the nut. It's a 3mm Allen wrench. I like to use a T-handle wrench just because it's a little easier to tighten or loosen some of the bolts. And I picked these T-handle wrenches up at Harbor Freight, relatively inexpensive, very handy on the workbench. And as you're removing the locking clamps, just make sure you set them off to the side in a safe place so you don't lose them. Now loosen all your strings up. This is where the T-handle Allen wrench really comes in handy as you're loosening the bolts that hold the strings into the tremolo. All right, now let's remove the strings from the tremolo. You'll notice that inside each saddle, there's a tiny little block that you got to be careful that those don't fall out so you don't lose them, because you can't just go to the hardware store and pick one of those up. And you also might find on these older guitars that you might have to use a little flathead screwdriver to kind of pry the block back a little bit enough to release the string. It's kind of common on these older guitars. Now unwrap the strings and pull them through the tuning posts. All right, now we can start feeding the strings in. And you notice how I restring backwards here. I've actually go in through the tuning post and then have the end ball down at the tuner end. On these types of guitars, I just think it's so much easier because then all I've got to do is just trim a little bit off at the bridge end, put it in the string clamp, lock it down, and then tune it up. Now we can trim the excess off down at the bridge end. So working with one string at a time, I will pull the string taut and guesstimate about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch past the fine tuners and snip that off with my wire cutters. And I've learned that once you lock that into the saddle and then tighten the strings up, that's the perfect amount of string around each tuning post. So you have about this much string left over. Then insert the string into the saddle and tighten the bolt down. Repeat the process for the remaining strings. Now it's time to wind the strings around the tuning post, so just grab the string winder. Now as you're making the first wrap around each tuning post, you might notice that the string might try to ride up on the end ball if you opted for the end ball at the tuning post method. Just push the string underneath the end ball, and typically after that the string won't come in contact with it again, as the wraps will be spiraling downward. And then we'll just continue that same process for each additional string. And don't forget to stretch your strings. Go through the string stretching a couple of times on each one. Just be careful on your first, second, and third strings that you don't pull too hard and accidentally break a string. Now reinstall your locking clamps on the nut, but don't tighten the bolts down yet because we still need to tune the guitar up. Now go through your tuning process. With a floating bridge guitar, you'll have to go through the tuning process a few times just until the strings and the tremolo get stabilized. And once you get it pretty close to being perfectly in tune, then you can lock your clamps down on the nut. And then any strings that are out of tune should be able to be adjusted with the fine tuners. If you find that a couple of them are a little outside of the range of the fine tuner, then just loosen the clamp up on that set of strings, tighten or loosen the string depending on which way it needs to go, and tighten the nut back down and check your fine tuner. But that really should be about it. All right, so if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. And if you found value in this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Be on the lookout for the next video. Keep rocking on.